Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this unique unit deep dive, we're going to be taking a look at the Japanese Samurai. This unit has had some solid improvements to its HP and attack in Definitive Edition, along with a cost decrease and cheaper elite upgrade. So we're going to talk about where it stands today, especially in relation to the Japanese already top tier champion line. Japanese have an embarrassment of riches, with two very good infantry choices between the castle and barracks that superficially seem to do similar things, giving good melee value while being weak to archers. It does raise the question of why you would make a unique unit that requires castles when the two have so much overlap, but as we'll see, there are some clear cases where samurai are objectively better. To start with an overview at a glance, they cost 50 food and 30 gold, meaning they're the same total resources as the swordsman line without supplies, though with supplies the longsword is cheaper in both food and gold. You are paying a bit of a premium, but the samurai is generally better across the board in terms of stats, with 10 more HP, 1 more attack, and a 5% faster attack rate than even the Japanese already faster attacking swordsman line, making them tied for the third fastest attacking unit in the game, only beaten by fire ships and Bulgarian knights/cavaliers. Just watching them any amount of time, you'll probably notice they seem a little eager and on edge, which fits with their enthusiastic attack rate. Diving a bit deeper now into the more hidden attributes, they're actually quite similar to longswords in their bonus damage as well, with a bit against eagles and buildings. The bonus against buildings in particular can fly under the radar, and without arson both units do about 500 damage per minute to buildings, getting closer to 600 with that tech. Samurai actually have a bit of an edge here thanks to the faster attack rate, and all this is nearly double the damage to buildings you get from fully upgraded Castle Age Knights, and close to 3 times what you get from even Japanese pikemen with identical upgrades. So clearly Samurai pack a lot of punch against buildings. They also move 11% faster than the swordsman line, and especially with squires have a pretty noticeable leg up over archers. I wouldn't put them in the fast infantry group, with even Huskarls for example having more speed, but samurai at least give a heavy infantry option with a bit of mobility. They then train lightning fast at just 9 seconds each, taking a bit of the sting out of requiring castles to make. Outside of the meme infantry units like Krambits and Shotels for creation speed, samurai are unusually quick to produce among their peers, tied with Urumi Swordsman is the third fastest to create at a castle. That can be handy when defending against rams or when trying to rush down enemy trebuchets, while of course unlike the swordsman line don't require multiple upgrades to hit the ground running in castle or even Imperial Age in that role. You may notice a theme running through all of this is samurai have some surprise factor, being quick to produce, relatively fast moving, fast attacking with some decent damage to buildings, and one lens you could view them through is as a surprise unit in especially Castle Age. The other lens to view them through is their more obvious specialty, which is countering melee unique units. From the start, they were designed with the unusual feature of having plus 10 bonus attack against those, growing to plus 12 when elite, which is completely unblockable and lets them hit far above their weight class in those matchups. Apparently, this is a reference to samurai seeking out high-ranking enemies, and makes them specialized to deal with some of the strongest units in the game. We'll take a look at that in a second, but first we should answer what counts as a unique unit in this case. You might think it's as simple as looking for purple boxes in the tech tree, since it suggests that those are what the game considers unique units, but actually many of these don't take extra bonus damage from samurai, including the Savar, Imperial Camel, Imperial Skirmisher, Hufnitsa, Winged Hussar, and Legionaries. Of course, that's not to say they may not do well in these matchups anyway, as Legionaries are the only ones here that are explicitly anti-infantry. Other cases where the bonus does apply though includes against Genitours and Condottieri. It might seem odd that the Imperial Skirmisher didn't take the bonus while these other team units do, but the rule of thumb is basically that anything upgrading an existing unit line won't suddenly take samurai bonus damage. Outside of those cases though, all unique units at the castle or dock will be hit by the bonus, including caravels, longboats, etc. And flaming camels and warrior priests also count as unique units for samurai purposes. Of course, the main thing this helps with is deal with enemy infantry unique units, and for the most part, those end up being very one-sided matchups for Japanese. There are a few that can still give samurai a bit of trouble though. Jaguar warriors, for example, have their own large bonus and nearly trade 1 for 1. On the other hand, samurai are slightly cheaper, and especially with their faster attack in a large group, they end up taking that fight pretty comfortably. In a similar vein, the Teutonic Knight again has good enough stats to nearly take on a samurai head-to-head, though again the Teutonic Knight is quite a bit more expensive, and once you factor that into a balanced fight, the samurai comes out ahead, actually looking pretty good. Mass Kamiak is another case where maybe with large enough numbers and some micro, you'd have to be careful, but in Castle Age that's pretty much the full list of infantry unique units to worry about. And for the most part, samurai deal with all of them effectively, especially ones with lower HP, where that faster attack rate can finish them off quickly. Of course, while they can't force an engagement, samurai are also pretty handy against unique cavalry units. Even on a reasonably large scale, the Manaspa loses outright, while costing significantly more resources per unit. The Cataphract in Castle Age also doesn't do particularly well, though this is before the unique tech Logistica comes in. Remember, the Cataphract's incoming bonus resistance applies only to anti-cavalry attacks, so the Samurai is actually doing its full anti-unique unit damage here, making it relatively one-sided with balanced resources. The one unique cavalry unit to really watch out for is the Persian War Elephant, which thanks to trample damage and just raw stats, can actually hold up to Samurai. Though this is getting into CBA trivia territory at this point, and remember Japanese have the best spear line in the game for handling cavalry already. All this to say, Samurai can have a very useful role against enemy melee unique units, though it's pretty clear they're not an overall anti-unique unit specialist. Any ranged unit from Plumed Archer and Longbow to Mangadai or Conquistador are unlikely to let Samurai get close enough to use their bonus, and is why I specify melee unique units are what they counter. Still, despite being slightly limited, it's an important role that can come in handy, preventing a Goth Huskarl or Ethiopian Shotel warrior spam, for example. Next though, let's see how they hold up in a more general sense, and if their better stats let them keep up with the Japanese swordsman line across various situations, or instead if it's best to stick with samurai purely in that anti-unique unit role. To start off head-to-head to give a sense of overall melee effectiveness, it should come as no surprise that samurai beat Japanese faster attacking longswords with equal numbers, though maybe surprisingly is they do it with about half their HP left. I have to think a chunk of this is the slightly faster attack rate, meaning they avoid some last-second damage. But either way, even with supplies and balanced resources, the samurai comes out ahead, suggesting it actually gives very solid melee value even without its bonus coming into play. Interestingly, they even compete with longswords in effectiveness against eagles, as despite having a smaller bonus, they end up with pretty similar HP remaining left over one-on-one. Another matchup worth checking on is against knights, where generic swordsmen are at a slight disadvantage against knights balancing resources. Japanese longswords then have a bit of an edge, technically winning that exchange if the knights actually commit to a balanced fight. Samurai though, with a similar comparison, actually hold up really well, again emphasizing some pretty well-rounded value in melee. Across most melee situations, it's safe to assume they're just a solid all-around unit, again even where their bonus doesn't come into play. It's starting to feel like whatever the longsword can do, the samurai can just do better. We even start to see the same thing against ranged units as well, with samurai taking more shots from a variety of common units. That is, until we consider gambazins, where suddenly everything flips. If the longsword gets gambazins, that entire dynamic reverses, and longswords take more shots, especially from skirmishers, where they take nearly twice as many. This is a big strike against samurai, and even if they are a little faster than longswords, these are very common units to run into. Maybe it's fair to say the samurai is the better choice in melee, but doesn't seem like it holds up particularly well to ranged units. This is where I would understand an argument that the more recent militia line buffs have had an unfortunate side effect of pushing the samurai down in comparison, as without gambazins the samurai's higher HP would make it feel better, but now it seems like they come with a bit of a trade-off. The problems for samurai are going to compound though as we switch to the Imperial Age. Of course, they have just the one elite upgrade compared to 2 upgrades for the longsword, but when it's all combined, both end up giving very similar value for similar total resources and research time. If anything, the swordsman line feels like it might even catch up a bit in terms of raw stats by getting 4 more attack compared to the elite samurai's +2, which is going to have some implications as we'll see in a moment given how close the 2 units already were in Castle Age. The elite samurai still attacks faster, ending up with more HP and moves more quickly, but has lower attack and pierce armor, while still remember costing 5 food and 10 more gold per unit. Some other notable upgrades coming in Imperial Age include the Arumi swordsman potentially gaining Woot Steel, making it a much closer match to samurai in the late game. The Cataphract also then gains Logistica, letting it perform much better in Imperial, nearly trading evenly with balanced resources. And the Romans also have the Legionary come in, which doesn't take unique unit bonus damage and can handle the samurai effectively. So in a few matchups, the elite samurai feels like it's losing a bit of ground. Even against the Japanese champion, it's actually no longer the clearly better choice in melee. While they beat Japanese champions with equal numbers, if you balance resources with supplies, it ends up being a nearly balanced fight, keeping in mind these are Japanese top-tier champions. Where the Samurai was the clearly better unit in melee during Castle Age, in the late game it's basically on par, while having a notably higher gold cost individually, and requiring castles. The same unfortunate story about ranged units holds up here again, with the lower costing champions tanking at least the same number of shots, and against elite skirmishers in particular take 70 javelins versus the elite samurai's 40. Again, samurai are a little faster and would have bonus damage against a ranged unique unit, but aren't clearly better like you'd hope for in a swordsman line alternative. The matchup with the elite skirmisher in particular though brings up the question of whether samurai are in fact worse at the champions and many unique units role of being anti-trash. Many infantry unique units, such as berserks, really become dangerous trash unit killers, but again it becomes hard to justify samurai over regular old Japanese champions. Against skirmishers, obviously the champion is better with gambesons, but even against hussars with equal numbers, or halberdiers when outnumbered 3-2, we see pretty similar results to the elite samurai in terms of HP left over. If we pay attention to gold losses in particular though, the samurai is losing considerably more, as they cost 30 gold each instead of the champion's 20. While this is often a role you can point to for infantry unique units, it's hard to justify for elite samurai, which does the job, but not nearly as well as their barracks counterpart when gold is at a premium. All of this leaves samurai with a well-earned reputation for being very situational, with a recurring problem being that they're standing next to one of the best champions in the game. That said, samurai started off looking pretty good in Castle Age, either as a quickly produced surprise unit or an anti-melee unique unit specialist, while even holding their own against knights in a pinch. The problem is they're quite susceptible to crossbows, like any infantry, but then don't really find a way to distinguish themselves in the late game, other than pushing your opponent out of their unique unit, making them feel like more of a counter unit than a generalist at that point. It's why various buff suggestions have been floated in comments and on the official forums for years, with ideas around giving them a ranged mode, a bit more pierce armor to at least match the champion line, or possibly resistance to damage from unique units to make them feel stronger against ranged unique units like Mangadai. I kind of like that idea in particular, as it would push other civilizations into generic alternatives to their unique unit, like Mongols and cavalry archers, but it's just one creative idea I've seen. In terms of some army compositions that can make sense, Japanese these days are largely played as a cavalry archer civ, though Halberd Onager is a popular composition in the very late game, and the crossbow line is fully upgraded as well. I wouldn't say samurai bring too much to these compositions though, as samurai are quite gold heavy, hard to mass without a lot of castles, and also not the best anti-skirmisher option you have, but could be sprinkled in against say a goth player making Huskarls for example. They give some solid DPS and have a pop efficiency and speed advantage over champions, though with notable weaknesses like difficulty to mass and less resistance to arrows. It does raise the question of why they're being paid 50% more gold than the champion though, and assuming their gold cost is their wage, they're no eagle warriors, but samurai are actually making pretty good bread relative to other infantry. Speaking of which, if you just noticed that smell, those are the freshly baked, always airy, yet crunchy buns just coming out of the oven at my new bakery Spirit of the Loaf. Submit your order today through the great website I made in minutes thanks to this video's sponsor Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a great-looking website, engage with your audience, and then sell anything from products to content to time all in one place. Using their built-in templates, you can easily customize a website to your preferred aesthetic and what you're looking to do with it. That could include selling physical goods or digital content, including access to your own video library, with Squarespace handling the payment side of things so you can focus on the bigger picture. The search engine optimization tools then help your website show up in searches more often, so you can continue to grow and scale your business more effectively. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/spiritofthelaw to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So that was a look at the current state of the samurai. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.